This is Resonance, a podcast for leaders that unpacks the power of song, silence, and strategy.
We believe that great leadership begins with deep listening, not just to others, but to the still small voice within.
It's not just about being a successful leader, it's about being soulfully aligned as well.
In a world moving fast, Resonance invites you to pause and reconnect with purpose, people, and possibility.
We'll dive into some cool stories, celebrate with friends, and dig deep into the music too. 'Cause song has a way of saying what words cannot alone.
So whether you're leading a business, a team, or just trying to lead your own life with more meaning, this is Resonance.
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 Hey, thank you for joining us for another wonderful episode of Resonance, the podcast that focuses on the heart, the soul, the spirit, the magic that happens when business leaders take a second and figure out who they really are and what they're really trying to do, all for the betterment of the world. That's what we're talking about. I got Mike the Monk Guy Farrell. He's going to be all over this topic because it's like right up his alley. We're going to be talking about virtue. And Steve Azar, musician, amazing human being, a charitable dude at every level, and just a cool guy all around. Lots to talk about there because virtue turns out to be an essence in music, and it turns out to be something that may or may not be present in the business of music. So we'll be talking about that. First of all, and my name's Randy Harrington. And so what we're going to be talking about is virtue. Where does that come from? It actually goes back, of course, all of this stuff goes back to the ancient Greek. It actually was associated with good manly things when it first happened. It was like, virtue was something that a good man did. But that was because back in the day, that was Greek culture, right? Only men did everything. So it was like, they were all the only ones on juries and blah, blah, blah. So there you go. But what we find it comes to mean is arete. It means excellence. It means readiness to fit, to join, to be suited, to have virtue is to be a part of. So I'm going to back off of all of that. I'm going to throw over to Mike because you're the legit scholar in this area. Speak to me of virtue and how I could be a better businessman.
All right. Well, yeah, virtue does go all the way back to the ancient Greeks, probably attributed to Plato and to a certain extent Aristotle. But really that virtue is that exercise of goodness.
I like that.
It really is. If you think of virtue, goodness on one side, vice on the other side is that exercise of the bad stuff, And so the Greeks talked about that conflict between virtue and vice and that kind of thing. But virtue, one of the things that's important to understand, there are a whole bunch of different virtues, but there are 4 virtues that are called the cardinal virtues.
Okay.
Not because of the color or the football team they play for or anything like that, but the cardinal virtues mean in the Greek tradition, the hinge virtues. So in other words, they can't work without each other. There are 4 of them. There's courage, there's justice, there's wisdom, and there's temperance. Those are the 4 cardinal virtues, and they all work together. And then there's 2 more that I love to talk about, which I call the leadership virtues, really coined by Alexander Havard, who wrote a book called The Virtuous Leader. He's a social scientist and academic originally from Moscow. And Havard talks about the 2 leadership virtues of humility and magnanimity. And we've certainly had those 2 on the show before. But I think the important aspect of virtue is, and especially the cardinal virtues, these are things that we acquire. They're things that we have to practice. They're things that we have to do in order to do them well. From the Catholic perspective, Steve, of course, will know this as well. We've got the theological virtues, faith, hope, and love, or faith, hope, and charity. Those cardinal or those theological virtues are instilled in us by God. We've all got them. We don't have to. I mean, certainly we want to exercise them, but the cardinal virtues are a different story. Those virtues we have to actually put to work. They're habits of good, and so we work at those. And the way that we work at virtue is through character. Character is kind of putting the wheels on the bike and taking it for a spin. And so it's those character traits driven by virtue. So Dr. Martin Seligman, who is the godfather of positive psychology, did extensive work on character and virtue and created a classification. He had 6 virtues and then he had 24 character strengths, and each of the and those character strengths would match up with one or another virtue. And so understanding those character strengths and how we use them. And I think what's important to understand is that just because, you've got, for instance, my top character strength is humor. But I also know that I can use humor and have it not in balance. I can either make fun of everything,
Right.
or I can take everything too serious, and so it's too little or too much. So exercising that character is really important. And so how we utilize that, how we do it in our daily lives, in our work, in our leadership journey, being able to exercise that character and those virtues, it's extremely important, because that's how people perceive us. They look at us from a perception standpoint. And I love to use the exercise, and I'm going to spring this one on Steve. I love to use the exercise in my workshop called "What Happens When the Leader Kicks a Dog?" Okay, and so Steve, you're in the process of hiring somebody to help you run your business, and you've had the 3rd interview. The interviews have gone great. You think this person is really good, and so you decide you're pretty sure you're going to hire them, but you're going to send them home. It's about lunchtime. You're going to send them home, and you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to call you back this afternoon, but we feel pretty positive about the direction that we're going. They take off and leave the building. You decide to go get some lunch, and so you walk out of the building and you're walking down the street, and you see this person that you just had the interview with about a block down, and all of a sudden he just reaches out and kicks this dog that's standing there. What do you do?
I've been that dog. Well, let me start there. Back in my day, when I was that dog, my initial feeling as the dog was to bite back.
Yeah.
But let's back up for a second. Yeah, they got no shot at coming to work for me. If you're going to treat a dog or anybody like that, then obviously there's something going on inside internally that would translate, I would imagine, down the road, maybe sooner than later. And that is a big no-no. That's out. Not because I'm a big dog advocate. I love dogs. I don't have one right now. I've had them most of my life. 80% of my life I've had dogs, but we're gone so much now. We feel like it'd be the wrong thing to do to keep putting a dog up in a kennel all the time right now. So we're thinking on that end, but no. I just feel like that's a bad sign right there. There's a lot more going on internally in that person that meets the eye, right? And
it's a bottom line, right? It's a bottom line. It's like you see that, and that's like,
yeah. Well,
it's like when people are starting to go and date, and somebody says, "Well, do you mind if I have a cigarette?"
Yeah,
that's over, right?
Well, but it's interesting because you can flip the coin and you can say, okay, this person just reached out and kicked that dog. But what if you were to find out later that person had actually been attacked by a dog at some point and was terrified of dogs and was just trying to defend themselves? What does that change?
Well, if that's what it looks, there's a difference. You just said just kick the dog. If I saw enough of the whole scenario, yes. So if you saw it and it just looked like it was flat out just, bad intention, then whatever. But I guess, do you take a second to ask the person, why did you kick the dog? Then I think it depends on how much you saw. What part of the movie did you tune into?
Sure.
Like, you know what I mean? So I guess, but I have a pretty good feeling they're out in my mind.
Yeah.
Second of all,
and I would agree. I think the thing about it is that's so important is that we have to understand that the exercise of good character and virtue, there's a perception there. And
sure,
in many cases, perception is reality. And so if we're doing things that contradict good character and virtue, and yet we claim that we've got, and certainly we can talk about all kinds of different people in all kinds of different roles, both today and in places where we've all been, where they talk about great character, but in reality, there isn't great character. I think one of the classic examples is Ken Lay and Enron. he was this guy that gave away all kinds of stuff. He was very charitable, all those kinds of things, was known as a great corporate leader, but but basically was really, not very virtuous at all, or Bernie Madoff, I mean, Madoff has, he was the pillar of the community and all that kind of stuff, and he's ripping everybody off. So I think that character is so important from a consistency standpoint. You really have to make sure that you're consistent in your exercise of virtue and character, because perception can be reality.
Look, they're just con
No
artists.
doubt about it.
These people are cons. I mean, they just want to win at all costs, and they're doing things that are absolutely. So your compass, your virtual, what do you call it? Virtue compass. So imagine, right? You want that sucker pointing north, not south.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
The bottom line is, the guy that I used to make records for a little while, he loved to kick the dog. He lived to kick. He lived for it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't just the only dog. There were a bunch of us. But it's well documented. Bad guy, period. Just that you can talk about all you want, just not a good guy. And man, the minute I got free of that, man, I could breathe again, because I wanted somebody to be that, like my dad or my father-in-law or some mentors of mine, great coaches I've had in my life. That's who I wanted in that spot, because I know we would have done so many more greater things, and so many other artists would have done so many more greater things, because he lived for kicking the dog. Lived for it.
Yeah.
Woke up. What dog am I going to kick today? It was the craziest thing you've ever seen.
Yep.
It was nuts. It made no sense. He was unhappy person. So, I mean,
There you go.
hey, guys, I pray for the guy every day that I can forgive him. And I have. It's not about that anymore. I just pray for him, hope he's going to be okay, because I've been way
There you
okay.
go.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
he lacked virtue.
But I think
Anything to
getting
do
with this
that.
is, I like the idea very much that this stuff, the distinction between the virtue characteristics that are inherent in us,
Yep.
not given, as you described,
Yes.
that was interesting, versus the ones that we have to go out, get, and develop,
Yep.
and exercise. And so I like this. Now, what were the four that hang together?
The cardinal virtues are wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance.
Right. So I want to add ing to all of those. In other words, couraging. I need to be couraging all the time. In other words, it's something I should be engaged in.
Yes.
Courage isn't this thing that just sort of sits.
Yep.
Courage is
Yeah.
something that is expressed, that shows up, that is developed. And I like the idea that it's an exercise. So courage is something I've been watching my 2-year-old granddaughter get comfortable in a pool. Right. And so she didn't like the idea at all.
Right.
First time. And now 2-3 weeks later, she's in the water and she's splashing around. But it was she had to develop courage, incrementally, and now she's, off to the races. But I really want to underline this idea for our listeners and for me, that this isn't stuff that you either have or you don't. It is stuff that you develop.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is I like to steal this stuff. In other words, when I see somebody who's demonstrating strong courage in a situation, it absolutely empowers me or emboldens me to well, I ought to be the one to be able to do that too.
Right.
I'm in the same room with these people, and it took that woman to stand up and say, the emperor has no clothes. Why didn't I say that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And those,
Take that
those
character-
virtues, those cardinal virtues, this idea of hinging off another one. So going to your 2-year-old granddaughter, Randy, she has courage now, she's in the water, but she wouldn't be there if she didn't also develop wisdom to realize that
Yes.
over these few weeks or whatever it's been, she realized, okay, this isn't so bad. This isn't so bad. Now I've got courage to do it. Well, she's developed wisdom and courage. They hinge off of each other.
And trust and faith and
Yes.
believe and
Yeah.
believing in
Yeah.
herself.
Yeah.
All of these things that you talk about, to me, that's the most important thing I've heard so far. And I would argue to say we're going to say anything more important than the fact that there you are, you got your moral compass, and that moral compass has to be continuously farmed. You have to continuously plant every year seed. You've got to nurture it, water it. You need sunshine, you need rain, and you've got to harvest it, and you got to go do good things with it once you got your crop.
Yep.
And this is constantly over and over in your life because there's plenty of temptations out there. And we're talking about the word virtue right now,
I
which
think
is all about behavior.
Yeah, I think the other piece of that, Steve, is you got to prune it as well. I just did a workshop for some clients here about a week ago. They wanted to talk about hunting and farming, and I said, well, let's talk about pruning. We all love wine. That wine gets better when they prune the vines. You get more fruit, you get better fruit. And so this idea of pruning the stuff that you don't need, pruning the stuff that is holding you back is really important. And that's how you also build virtue and character. It becomes more fruitful when you cut out some of the things that you don't need.
You get pretty leggy as a person, I guess, and then you don't bear fruit or good flowers. So you don't, all that. Right. Pruning is very important. And that's just, what do you call that? Maybe tweaking a little bit as you go and making sure that you are on the right track.
How many times in the studio did a producer take something out to make it better?
There were a lot of times in the studio that they ate ice cream. I saw them do, but
that's another thing.
I don't think
you know
really
what I'm saying, right?
Pruning.
Sometimes, sometimes when you see all those knobs and you have all the capability and you have all the digital whatever and you could do all the things, and sometimes I hear stuff that is so overproduced and it's like, God, just clean that stuff out. I just want to hear that guitar and I want to hear that voice. And you're always, one of the things I love about your music, Azar, is that you walk that line really, really well.
Well, the first album,
there's a lusciousness to.
Yeah. Well, I had to survive. I had to survive the first album in the mid '90s, which was awful. And we didn't walk that line. The producer was coding it and hiding it and coding. It was awful. It was awful. And it was the one thing I always told my kids when I've told you guys, when things aren't going good in their lives, I play them a little bit of that record and they go, my life's great. That record's awful. But I had to survive that. I had to constantly work to get to the other side. And I would like to think that my moral compass and my virtues and stuff were aligned at that point in my life where people noticed and they wanted to give me another shot.
I'm reflecting now. I've been reflecting a lot on why the world is so different, particularly when I talk to young people. It just feels, my heart hurts for them a lot in terms of what they're having to go through with social media and just everything, the sense of hopelessness that they're experiencing. And I'm thinking a lot about, back in my day, I remember I was never a good scout. We moved all the time and it just was never a thing. But I remember really, even by the time I was in high school, if I was talking to another guy and he was in the Scouts or he said, I'm on my way to being an Eagle Scout.
Yeah.
You
hang in with that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That is some stuff.
Yeah.
You don't just wander into that. That means that you have done years of work on your character.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And you're able to demonstrate capability as well as compassion and sort of civility. So if I found a guy, or even as a person hiring people, and they would drop on their resume, oh, as an Eagle Scout, I'm going to ask them 10 questions about that, make sure they didn't kick the dog.
Right.
That really says something to me. And so I'm wondering, where do young people these days, how are they able to learn? Where do they learn the hinge characteristics?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, church.
I think it's a challenge. I mean, obviously the religion in our country of all forms and fashions has decreased. Although I will say that we've seen an uptick here in the last couple of years, which is very encouraging. But certainly that virtue, that character, that hope, that moral compass, you learn it at home. You learn it in church, in whatever religion it is that you do. I think the other piece of it is I mean, in higher education, I don't know how many universities across the country have cut out their humanities programs. I mean,
we don't need that stuff.
There's a school that's not too far from here that completely cut out philosophy and theology and social sciences and that kind of thing. Well, that's
because they had already cut out the arts, so that was the next victim.
That's right.
Right.
And it's remarkable. It's remarkable how important.
Put your finger right on it, Azar.
you're not nurturing the most important thing that everyone needs. Everyone needs this to reach good moral compass and to reach, I mean, these things that are, and how could these be the things that you eliminate from teaching? It makes no sense. Makes no sense. You cannot develop as a human being without them, unless you got a great home life and you got a great teacher, a coach, or somebody else that's doing something and helping you get, helping you overcome the lack of that in school. I think we should just quit now. Y'all got me one.
What we are learning, and I'm going to make it worse, because I think what we are doing a lot is we do a lot of virtue signaling, right? So we don't have the, or maybe I have the virtue, but I want you all to know that I have the virtue.
Right.
So I'm going to reveal something about myself that says, well, yes. And so I saw this man kick a dog. And so I went and I picked up that dog and I took that dog to the vet and I made sure that dog was okay. Because that's how much I care about dogs. I'm a dog person.
Yeah.
It's like, whatever. Okay. Yeah. But do you have to, whenever somebody tells me that stuff, it loses points.
Yes.
It's like if and I do it too, I get upset because sometimes I'll go and really clean out the garage, or I'll do something really big, and my wife will come in and she'll just walk right past it, and
you're going like,
and I'm like,
wait, what we got?
so, come on now. And so I'll work it into the conversation later. I'll be like, well, I had a busy day after my calls. I went out there and took care of that stuff in the garage, and then she'll go, oh, I didn't notice. I know. I just wanted to bring that up.
Hey, Randy,
but somebody had to do it, right?
That has anything to do with moral compass and virtues, and I'm out, because I got to tell you something.
Yeah.
When I go out and clean the pool, because the cypress trees, I got two big, huge cypress trees that apparently we can't cut down, that spit all in the pool all year long, whatever it is. And I'll go and go look at the pool, and she won't look, or I'll clean. I'm the one that cleans the car. And you know what she says? That's your job. And I said, oh, it's my job. Okay.
Oh, yeah. You can't be claiming any virtue for that.
No, I get no point. I'm getting no job. But I got to tell you something. I keep saying it. I'm going to keep saying it forever. Because anyway, but that's a very good point, because we do have a tendency to want to be patted on the shoulder for something that you did good. Now, these things are things to mess with our brides, and we're messing around, and we can do that because we're together a lot and we got to have conversation, and that just could be entertainment. But the truth is, I do love that point. At what point does the good deed not become a good deed because you wanted to George Costanza? Well, I bought the salad.
Yeah,
that's it.
There it is, right there.
I didn't get I actually paid for the big salad, right?
Yes. And then how impressed are you when you see that person doing the lonely work and they don't expect the credit for it? They don't even know they're being seen doing it. So they're just doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And that's amazing.
And that really leads us into the two leadership virtues: humility.
Yes,
and
you're right.
We've talked about this before. I mean, this idea of humility, and unfortunately, in my opinion, there is a lack of it in the world today. And we really need to understand that humility isn't about shirking in the corner and not wanting any attention or anything like that. It's about doing great things without needing any attention.
That's right.
And doing great things for others, not just for yourself.
Bingo.
And then, of course, that leads to the idea of magnanimity. And magnanimity is seeing the greatness in others and bringing out the greatness in others. As leaders, if we don't exercise those four hinge virtues, we're not exercising humility, and we're not seeing the greatness in others, but only in ourselves, that's a recipe for disaster. And that's a recipe that makes organizations create mistrust, lack of communication, a lack of cooperation. All of those things happen when the leader begins to go the other way, and then virtue becomes a competitive disadvantage, not advantage.
Well, I hear you guys talk about the assessment of virtue when you play golf with people.
Yeah.
So you see somebody play golf, and as I understand it, you can tell a lot about a person's virtue or lack thereof just by watching them play golf for a round. This is a true story.
It's the one sport that definitely tells on you. Either way, you're gonna you can't hide. You can't hide from
Yeah.
who you are on the golf course. It will show
Yeah.
itself in a 4.5 hour
And
round,
that's
will it not,
and I've
Mike?
been in plenty of yeah, and I've been in plenty of situations where I've met people and been in meetings with people and that kind of stuff, thinking, "Oh, this is a great person," and then you get them on the golf course, and the first thing they're doing is throwing clubs and cussing and swearing and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, or cheating, that's the other one you catch all the time, and it's like that's a bit like the leader kicking the dog, it's those actions where they're doing it in a public setting, and you can see that that is just the opposite of what you thought of that person from a character and virtue standpoint, because they're not exercising that.
Yeah.
So I'll tell a quick story about my niece. She's a fireball of a person. She finished at UCLA, and then she lived in our house for a summer, and she decided she wanted to go to law school. I thought that was a fine idea. But she not only wanted to go to law school, she wanted to go to a particular law school, an expensive law school, which was University of California, Berkeley Law School. And so she had to take the LSAT, the exam you have to take to get into law school, right? And she grew up in France, so she speaks English as a second language, but she's a fine speaker, but it is a little bit of a thing. So she's got to take the LSAT. Well, not only did she have to take the LSAT to get into law school, but she needed to crush the LSAT so that she could get a scholarship. That was the only way she was going to be able to go. So I said something flippant like, well, you should try a past practice exam or maybe take a course on how to take the LSAT or blah, blah, blah. She looked at me like, thanks for the advice. I know what I'm doing. And so I come down one morning, 7 a.m. She's sitting at our main table, and I start to talk to her, and she just holds up her finger like, don't even talk to me right now. She was taking a practice LSAT test. She would then score the test. She would then walk away. Then in the afternoon, she would look at all the things she got wrong, and she would go back and study those things. Then the next morning at 7 a.m., she sat down and took another test. She did that 30 days in a row.
Wow.
And that test takes 2-3 hours each. So she takes 30 practice tests and then ended up taking the LSAT itself, and for real, twice. She got a very high score the first time, but she thought she could do better. So she took it again, and she did. And she got a better score. She got the scholarship. She got into Berkeley. Then she went and clerked for a federal judge in Detroit. And now she's going to be a public defender for children in Detroit. I mean, this is her dream. This is what she wants to do. She wants to be in there fighting for the little guy. And holy smokes, I always thought she was a tiger. I always thought she was a wonder. But I have never seen anybody that putting that much juice into this, really shoulder to the ground. And she never told anybody that. The only reason I know that is because I came downstairs every day
morning.
Good God. Yeah. So I mean, this is the thing. These virtues are like a forge, I mean, you don't just play at this. You have to lean into it. You have to commit parts of who you are to it. I was thinking, I don't have any tattoos. I don't want any tattoos. But when you were talking about the virtues, I was like, that'd be a good tattoo. Those four words kind of hanging together, showing that would be a reasonable thing to remind yourself of.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. I've actually got a great big one like that on my back, Randy. The problem is I can't see it. So yeah, and I think the other piece that as I work with leaders, and I know as you work with leaders as well, Randy, I think leaders have a tendency to kind of poo-poo this too much.
Yeah.
Same
reason they cut it out at the university.
Yeah. I mean, they really look at this, all of the other management, I've got an MBA and I've got this and I've got that and I'm strong at this and I'm strong at that. They want to tout those characteristics or those talents really is what they are. But you rarely hear them talk about virtue as something that they can utilize as an advantage. And I think that, there are many, many examples out there of leaders who have used that as a competitive advantage. Leaders that understand that the way that I function, the way that I take care of my people, I talk a lot about Bob Chapman. Bob is the CEO of Barry Waymiller, and his whole story is coming to the idea that the way that we measure how well our people are doing is the divorce rate in our organization. And when the divorce rate is going down, it means that people are going home and having conversations with their spouses and that they're doing good things. And so really understanding what that looks like in making people matter. But the thing about it is, what most leaders don't understand is that if you're not exercising those virtues and those characteristics, character traits, then you're doing something opposite. And that something opposite is virtually impossible to make those around you better. You know, I've had a conversation just recently with a client, and I said, and they're talking about hiring somebody new for a fairly significant position, and they're talking about interviewing somebody from a different division to do that. And I said, okay, let's ask them 3 questions. Number 1, what worked well in the division that you were doing? What were the challenges and how did you overcome them? And the third one, and the most important one, is how did you make your people better? Without that question, they just tout off all of the metrics, all of, well, this happened and this happened and this is what we achieved. And, we got great sales numbers and we had great market share and we had great cost accounting and all those kinds of things. But when you ask them how they made their people better, now they have to really start thinking about, okay, how did I make my people better? And that starts with virtue and character. You can't make others better. What's that, Steve?
Well, you said something. You keep talking about something that I think I'm hearing. It takes time to develop and to have the respect of others.
Exactly.
Right? It's almost like it has to be a body of work before you get
right. I mean, you talk about your father-in-law all the time, Steve. That's a classic example of leading with virtue and character, and he did that over years,
over a lifetime of work. Exactly. It's funny you talk about that. Every award that we've been to, he's received everything. Every one you go to at Arkansas, you're going like, man, there is a common denominator that runs through everybody that introduces him, everybody that says it, gets up and speaks about him, and it all goes right back to this we're talking about today. He exudes it. And he's earned it. Because how can everybody be wrong? They're not. They're all right about that. And we all know that too with our family. But to see the world say it, the business folks, the people he's had to probably go up against and make tough decisions, the people he make, his decisions hadn't always been like, it's cake and ice cream all the time. Everything's hunky and dory. He's had to make a lot of difficult decisions to make that company grow and flourish. And so, that there were some unfavorable decisions made. He could have made some people not be so comfortable with him. But when it comes to, that body of work, at the end of the day, man, he gets to be the one that points the moral compass north.
Right.
And that's what they all shout about.
When we were doing research on the book Evolutionaries some years back, we met a guy who runs a very high-end machine shop in Portland. And these are people that do stuff like make components for nuclear reactors for the Navy. So these are crazy complex machine shop, steel, whatever. Well, they had, I want to say, I'm going to make the number up, they had 100 really talented people working for them. Something happened. There was some big contract that they had, and that thing went away. And for the first time in like 50 years, they were going to have to lay people off. And so we interviewed the CEO. We're talking to the CEO, and the CEO says the following. He says, I had to make a business decision where we were going to lose 11 of our team members that are family. That's the way we think of these people. They are our brothers and sisters. And to do this was the hardest thing I've ever done. And so I brought my HR person in and I said, we're going to do this because we have to, but we are going to do it better than anybody has ever done it ever. We're going to make this the most transparent, elegant, amazing story where people might say, I wish I'd gotten laid off because of how cool and respectful and powerful it was. And they did. So when the people found out they got laid off, everything was already taken care of for them. Here's the checks, here's the thing and the thing. Here's what you can do because we know you're going to need childcare. We've already got that set up. And here's this other thing we're going to do. They had done all of the work that they could for these people. And I think when we went back and talked to them, maybe 2 years later, at least 50% of them had been able to come back in. But it was just such a beautiful thing that this guy was like, I have to do this, but I'm going to do it in a way where that's the story people are going to tell about our company.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that's a great example of how when you lead with virtues like that, you can take something that's crappy and actually turn it into something that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. There's another great story similar to that. There's a utility company in Detroit, and back during the financial crisis, their board had decided they were hemorrhaging big time, and their board told their CEO, "You've got to lay off a big chunk of folks here," and it just, just really, the CEO did not want to do it, didn't want to lay anybody off. And so what he did is he went to his people and said, "Okay, the board wants me to lay everybody off. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to let you guys figure out how we might get past this so that we don't have to lay anybody off." And he started getting groups of employees together to talk about this, to brainstorm, to come up with ideas. And what they found out as they looked at the numbers, they found out that what they really needed to do was reduce hours. And by reducing hours, they were able to maintain their budget. And so what they did is they created this sort of interesting approach using vacations, and they allowed employees. So if one person had a week's worth of vacation and somebody needed to get time off, they were swapping out vacation hours so that they didn't have to. And I probably don't have the story exactly correct, but anyhow,
I
what
know
they
what
were
you're saying,
doing was
though.
they were swapping out hours and time off and all that kind of stuff to get the cumulative number of hours down, and not one single person got laid off. And I remember the story about 6 months later, the CFO came to the CEO with the quarterly results or whatever it was, and he laid the numbers down on the desk, and the CEO looked at it and said, "Well, something's goofy here. This is screwed up. There's no way that number is correct." And the CFO said, "It is very much correct. We have completely turned this thing around because people have embraced this idea of being here, of being productive, and of doing it as efficiently as they possibly can. And our numbers now are looking fantastic." So again, when leaders exercise virtue, when leaders exercise this idea of doing the right thing for the right reason to make their people better, it allows them a distinct competitive advantage. I would argue in 40 years of working with leaders, I don't know of any that I have ever worked with that didn't exercise great character and virtue and were a failure. It doesn't happen very often,
It's a very powerful point, and I would corroborate that on my side of the fence too.
And me too, guys. And me
exactly.
too. Great songwriters, great artists. Humility, you talk about that being a key to good virtues and stuff. I would say the same thing in my business. The ones that have lasted the longest and have built these incredible relationships over time is because they do have higher ground morals.
Yeah.
Their virtues are all intact, and you notice it when you're in the writing room immediately. You notice it when you're recording. You notice it when you're on the road with them. You notice it when you're on stage with them, and you notice how they are with the people before, after shows, how they hold themselves. At some point, you're judged at this body of work, and you got to hope that your compass is pointing north when it's all said and done.
That's exactly right.
Mike, do you remember off the top of your head, there is a website that allows you to do a free assessment of your virtue?
And it's a tool that I use all the time. It's called the Values and Action Inventory, or Values and Inventory, the VIA. And what it does
VIA, wonderful.
it assesses your top, it breaks these 24 character strengths, and then assesses what your top character strengths are. And I use this tool with every single client I've ever worked with over the last 10 years because it's a tool that really allows them to understand. And I use the idea that most of the time when we manage people, we manage to minimize weaknesses. Whereas if we manage to maximize strengths, we'd have people that would be a whole lot better, and we'd help our people be better. But the thing about it is, it's hard to manage to maximize strengths if you don't know the strengths. And
that's right.
This is a great tool to understand what your character strengths are.
And it's free.
Yeah, it's free. Yeah. Go to, I think it's VIA.org. It's it's actually the tool that Seligman developed with Chris Peterson. It's out of the University of Pennsylvania, and it's also put out by the Positive Psychology Institute or something like that. But just look up Values and Action Inventory, That's the key. I think it's VIA.org, and you can take that assessment and really look at what is it that are my character strengths, and how do I use those in balance to become a better leader.
I found it to be accurate, but also surprising.
Yes. Yeah.
I was like, oh, that was interesting.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about
Yeah.
myself.
And,
It's
and,
like holding up a mirror.
one of the important distinctions that I'll make with it too, a lot of people are familiar with DISC or Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, or, those are personality tools. Those assess how we're hardwired. We can't really
Right.
change them. We might tweak them a little bit, but we can't really change them. The VIA,
Who you are.
yeah, the VIA is our character strengths. Those will change based on our experience, based on how much we work on them, based on the situations that we're in. Now, they may not change a lot, but they will go up and down. A lot of times they'll talk about the top 5. Well, when I work with my clients, I talk about the top 8, because I know that 4 through 8 could be interchangeable depending on what's going on. And so understanding what those are. So it's something that you can use and that you can work on. And I think it's a great tool. I think it's one of those underrated management and leadership tools.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
I want y'all to send that to me. I'm ready.
You could probably write a whole album.
All right. I'll send it to you.
I'd love to have that. I would love to do that. What was the other test? One of Gwen's friends, Sandy, sent it to me. I took the test, and what was the
Clifton?
one that so many people are? No,
was it the Clifton Strengths Finder?
No, the other one. Keep coming. It's a big one. It's what everybody seems to be taking in business.
DISC, Enneagram.
No, come on. We've talked about it before. I forget it.
There's so many of them.
Edited out. Yeah. Well, you know it. We've talked about it.
We'll find it out and we'll bring it back next time.
Yeah. Well, I think it's time for us to hit the road.
Was this one of those "Are you hot or not" kind of things? Is that what that was? I think that's probably what it was.
Yeah. I've enjoyed today listening. I got to tell you guys something. I really wanted to sit this one out a little bit, because I feel like this is y'all's wheelhouse right here. I'm all about virtues. Huh? Yeah. Oh yeah. Mike, I've done enough interviews with Mike to know that we could do this for a couple months, talk about but it reminds me of the people that I can see them right now, right, in my life, that have mattered, who all of them worked at that and carried that all the way through their lives. And so and how impactful it was for everybody around them. Amazing.
And that's the key.
Amazing.
That's the key.
All right. Well, Rand, who's oh, look at that
impact.
And this is me today.
There's my word.
I'm gonna have to have one that's about day long. Yeah.
Well,
hey friends, it's been wonderful to have you on Resonance. Thank you for joining us. We hope that your virtues are getting aligned and you're thinking of virtues as a verb, right? Get out there and do it. Make the world a better place. Mike Farrell, why don't you tell us how people can listen to this podcast?
All right. Well, you can find us at resonanceleader.com. You click on that and you'll see all the different links to all the major platforms. If you're already on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, just do a quick search and
get your friends to listen to this too. They need it.
Absolutely.
Those unvirtuous friends. Hey, here's a hint. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And Steve, what else are we cooking up besides the podcast?
What else are we cooking up? I don't have a trick question.
Resonance Live.
We're gonna
Resonance Live.
Sure. You can bring us in to do a very unique conference. Obviously, I've done enough of these things with the music portion making a big difference. You guys have been doing this for a living. And when the times that I've gotten to do it over probably the last 15 years of my life, I've really walked out of there really feeling good about the opportunity to do music on that level, in that platform.
Yeah.
Very, very different from the dark stage, the lights hitting you in the spotlight and all that. It's a lit up room. It's a different kind of thing. So it's been really interesting. I've learned a lot about myself and I've learned a lot about others. And so you can bring us in live. Obviously, Resonance has a live version, and we would love to come to your company or your city, or, we're ready to roll. So just go to resonanceleader.com and you can find out how to do that.
All right, guys. Once again, we got another one in the books, and we will see you next time on Resonance, the podcast. All right.
Thanks for listening to Resonance. Find us at resonanceleader.com.